Welcome back to Morgan Hill Farms. So today I've got a great video for you guys. We're going to be planting carrots today, and I've got an amazing tip that I was given by an older farmer at our local supply store. And since I've been using this tip, I've been super successful and gotten amazing carrots. So I'm going to share that with you today. First, before I get to the carrots, I had a few leftover cabbages that I did not have room for in my in-ground garden. But now that I have a free row, I'm going to go ahead and get these guys in. They're just some early golden acre cabbage as well as some Savoy cabbage, which is sort of like a curly headed cabbage. But I wanted to give you guys a quick tip that I didn't mention in my brassica video the other day. Of course, I'm amending each hole with some blood meal and bone meal to feed these plants. However, I have run out of compost. I brought compost in the beginning of spring, and I don't have any of that left. So if you've run out of compost, what you can do is just simply grab a bag of compost from your local garden center and then just take a handful and put a handful into each direct planting hole that you're putting your plants into. That should be just fine for your plants if you don't have enough to top each row with like 1 to 2 inches. Okay, so moving on to the carrots here. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is just take my irrigation off of my bed just to make it easier to work with. This bed I had eggplant in during the summer season, and we took those out, but when we took them out, we just cut them at the base. A lot of times I like to let my plant roots rot in place. It provides a really good food for your worms and just all of the, microbiology in that soil and everything. But when you're planting carrots, you really want your soil nice and airy and loose. And so I'm going to spend just a minute here taking out all of these roots and things. If you don't have these, then you can just obviously skip this step. It'll make your process a lot easier. So we're going to start by adding in a few things to our bed. One, because I've run out of compost, I'm just using some store-bought Black Cow. This stuff used to be really great. It's not really the greatest anymore, but I had it up in the garage. And so, whatever you have, just go ahead and throw that in there just to give a little bit of organic matter back to your soil. The next thing that we're going to add in is vermiculite. Now, I got this from Home Depot, but typically I get this from my farm supply store. They're much bigger bags, and it's a much better price. So vermiculite is a soil amendment, and what it does is it helps to keep the soil nice and loose and airy, but it also helps to retain moisture, which is really key when growing carrots. And then the last thing that we're going to add is peat moss. Peat moss is going to be the main component here that's going to aerate our soil and keeping it nice and light so that those carrots can form nice, strong, good roots, and that they're not going to come out kind of twisted and gnarly, because if your carrots run into anything, they'll try to grow around it or they won't be able to get through it, and you won't get that nice, typical carrot length and thickness. Okay, so this is the point where it's really handy to have some muscle here. Nate was busy working on some other projects, so I'm going to take my shovel and I'm literally just going to turn this bed over. If you are a no-till person, this is not the method for you, because we are definitely tilling this soil. So I'm going to keep working at this. It is a great workout, and we're just going to keep mixing all of that in until I'm not seeing any big pockets of peat moss or vermiculite or compost, and my soil is nice and broken up, and any roots or anything in there that might impede those carrots growing is going to be taken out. Now I'm just going to come in with a metal rake, and I'm just going to smooth that bed out and make it nice and level. You do want it level because the next few steps could cause your seeds to kind of, pool into lower areas, and you don't want that. So make sure your soil is nice and even throughout your bed. And then this is where we get into the fun trick that farmer told me. You want to make sure that the soil is nice and moist. You need to keep these seeds wet and really, really moist for germination. So here's my trick. So I went and I got some sand up from my chicken coops. There's nothing special about the sand in my chicken coops. It's just where I have my sand. And I am going to be planting carrots. The variety is called Tender Sweet. And I have a 4-ounce package here. It cost me about $9 or so, but that's a ton of carrot seeds. And so what I do is I just get a good amount in my hand, and I will put them into that sand. And I'm going to mix it up really, really well so that I can make sure that all of the seeds are nice and dispersed in there. Now, when these start to sprout, we are going to thin them, but we don't have the time to see if they germinate and then reseed. So you definitely want to overseed these. Once that's all nice and mixed, you're going to take that and broadcast it over your damp soil. Now, the nice thing about the sand is that you can kind of see where you've been. If you see that you have a bit of a lighter area, you can go ahead and go back and recover that. Like I said, I do this very, very heavily because you need to get these into the ground now about 4 to 5 weeks before your first frost date, so that these guys have some time to get established. What I will do for these when my first frost comes is I will make sure that I put a frost fabric over them. Carrots are pretty hardy, but that first frost sometimes can shock a lot of your fall vegetables that can typically live through frosts and freezes, and my carrots will live through the freezes, but that first frost can sometimes be really detrimental to them. So make sure you have some type of cover on them when that nighttime temperature drops below 32 degrees. I talked to you earlier about the variety. This is called Tender Sweet. Now, this is an heirloom, and this is by far the sweetest carrot that you can plant. In the fall time, most carrots are sweet, but this one is so sweet that they actually use it to make quite a bit of your hybrid varieties. This one is coreless. It's perfect for canning. You can juice it, you can eat it raw, you can cook it. And this will be ready in about 70 to 80 days. Some of your smaller varieties will be even quicker than that. Now, once you get that all broadcasted in, you're gonna take your hose and you're gonna use a really light water setting, and you want to get these really nice and damp, but you don't wanna form puddles where your seeds are kind of running and pooling into areas, because you'll have a lot of germination in that little spot there, and you'll have some bare areas in your bed. So just, be patient and wet it down and be nice and calm and just careful with it. And now I'm gonna just replace my irrigation on top of that damp sand. And then I'm gonna take cardboard. This can be any type of cardboard. We're gonna end up removing this in a little while, but we're gonna put this down on top of that damp sand. And what that's going to do is it is going to keep the soil nice and moist, and it's not going to allow it to dry out. We're gonna be checking this probably from day 3 to day 6 or so. Once we start seeing an okay amount of them germinate, when you see the first one germinate, you don't want to pull it off just yet. Wait till you're seeing a good amount of them germinate, and then you can go ahead and pull this cardboard off. Now, if you have any sort of wind in your area, you are going to want to weigh this cardboard down. I just have these landscape timbers that we had used for trellises that had kind of fallen off of my beds. So I'm gonna lay those on top of this, but you could use rocks. You could really use anything to weigh it down. And then you are going to want to give that a nice water. You want that cardboard to soak up a lot of water to help keep those seeds underneath wet. And I will actually come down 2 to 3 times a day to water this. If you're only able to do it twice a day, that's okay. The irrigation underneath is going to help if you have that available, but keep them nice and moist, and you will have carrots this year.
Okay guys, well, if you've had problems growing carrots in the past, I highly suggest that you try this method. My bed was a little hard to prep just because I had all those roots in it. Yours may not be as hard, so it probably won't take you quite as long as this took me. But I promise, carrots in the winter are so sweet and delicious. Their texture is just, I don't know, almost like silky. They're still crisp, but they're not tough. They're much more tender. So I really highly suggest that you guys grow carrots this year. Try to get them in now. It is the beginning of September here, and so my first frost is coming in about 6 to 7 weeks or so. But now's the optimal time to get them in. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. If you have any questions, please leave them below, and we will see you in the next video.